Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 3 of this course. Today we're going to be discussing good and bad practices in the promotion of freedom of expression. So we're going to be looking at the practices that either suppress or the practices that promote the freedom of expression for artists. The right to freedom of expression is a fundamental human right enshrined in international law. It is a necessary condition for the realization of many other fundamental human rights. The right to artistic freedom of expression relates more specifically to creative forms of expression and the production of various forms of art. Despite the fact that the freedom of expression is provided for in many domestic laws, the ability of artists to perform, display, or disseminate their work is limited through direct and indirect means. As a result, few artists remain willing to publicly express critical views or to use their work to explore controversial themes, and those who do face serious consequences. Now we move on to the cases of repression, and we're going to start with Zimbabwe, an African country. Now, on March 26, local visual artist Owen Maseko, 36, opened a new exhibition at the Bulawayo National Art Gallery called Sibaton Tiseli, which, when translated in English, means let's drip on them. And this exhibition was scheduled to run through the month of April. Now, the exhibition contains scenes from the turbulent Gukuraundi period, where government troops were said to have killed thousands in the Matabele land region in Zimbabwe from 1983 until the signing of the Unity Accord in 1987. His paintings portrayed victims dripping blood with glaring portrayals of President Robert Mugabe and the bloodied figure of Joshua Nkomo, the late vice president, bending to sign a peace agreement. Now, one day after the launch of the exhibition, the police arrested and detained Maseko together with Voti Tebe, the owner of the gallery or the person in charge of the gallery where Maseko had his exhibition. The exhibition, which was also a first of its kind, was also banned. Now, Maseko was initially charged under the Criminal Law and Codification Reform Act for purveying obscenity and ethnic bias. Section 33 of the legislation outlaws undermining the authority of the president, and Section 42 makes it a crime to utter provocative statements about the race, tribe, place of origin, or religion. Now here is a picture of Owen Maseko with the paintings that were banned and the paintings that he was arrested for. We move on to the case of repression. So we're going to be giving examples using countries. Like I said, we've done Zimbabwe. So now we're going to be focusing on Somalia and Rwanda. Now, Somali artists who remain in the country because they are either unable to flee or have chosen not to do so are continually faced with targeted killings, intimidation, injuries, and deprivation of their basic rights to work and express themselves freely from all sides in the conflict. So I don't know if you know, but there is a war going on in Somalia, and as a result of this, artists that express themselves through their works are mostly targeted. Now, on the 18th of June 2008, unidentified armed men with knives killed multi-skilled musician in Mogadishu, and the name of this multi-skilled musician is Abdul Qadir Ado Ali. He was stabbed to death. Now we move on to Rwanda. Now, obstacles to artistic freedoms in Rwanda do not target a particular category of artists, but rather a category of population, meaning women, art practitioners. Women making a living as artists or wishing to engage in artistic careers continue to be regarded as different by the society, and some artistic disciplines like drumming are forbidden for women. Women are not allowed to participate in drumming. However, in the most recent times, women projects like Ngoma Nsha, which means new drums in English, have challenged traditional values and are for the first time allowed women drummers to perform both nationally and internationally in this art discipline of drumming. Also, it is important to note that young girls from Muslim communities are not allowed to perform traditional dances because their heads and hands can be covered, but they are allowed to rehearse. So they can't perform nationally or internationally, but they can rehearse. We move on to the case of repression in Nigeria, and we're going to be focusing on none other than Folare Falana, who most of us know as Falz, the bad guy. In August 2018, the Nigeria Broadcasting Commission, known as the NBC, fined JFM 11.9 radio station a sum of 100,000 naira for hearing the banned song, This is Nigeria. Now, NBC is mandated to receive and inquire into any complaints from members of the public who are offended by the content of a broadcast or the behavior of a broadcast station. Now, a religious group known as the Muslim Rights Concern condemned parts of the video showing dancing girls dressed in hijab, and they filed a petition as a result of this. Now, they were also willing to withdraw this petition if FAWS apologized to Nigerian Muslims as requested through a 7-day ultimatum in June 2018, but FAWS refused to apologize. Now, FAWS, in an interview with Free Meals, told them that the inclusion of the dancing girls wearing hijabs were a symbol of the Boko Haram incident where young girls were abducted from Chibok and Dapchi, and therefore not intended to insult Muslims or denigrate Islam. His motive was simply to emphasize that the lives of these girls matter because the response of our government to this kind of situations is extremely sluggish and unacceptable. Now, this is a picture of FAWS, and also it is important to note that in November 2018, FAWS initiated a lawsuit against NBC claiming the ban on a song, This is Nigeria, is a breach of his right to freedom of thought, conscience, and expression as guaranteed by the Constitution. Now, we also move on to the northern part of Nigeria, where we have an artist known as Yusuf, was found guilty on a 3-count charge for releasing a song without the approval of the Kano State Censorship Board, for releasing a video without obtaining approval, and also for the defamation of the character of Governor Ganduje. Now, here is a picture of Yusuf on the BBC News. We also move on to the case of repression in Turkey and Uganda. So, 2018 was the year in which artists in Turkey experienced a lot of violations of artistic freedom, and the government was responsible for over 96% of it. Over 30 artists and cultural workers were arrested and remanded in pretrial custody, and out of these 30, 9 of them were sentenced to prison. Now, I'm going to read a particular quote, and this quote is by Ugandan musician Nsubuga Moses, popularly known as Viboyo. There is no freedom of expression in Uganda. As long as you say anything bad that the regime does, trust me, your freedom is gone. It is compromised. Now, Viboyo made this statement after he was arrested in October 2018 for offensive communication, for allegedly using obscene words like buttocks to abuse President Museveni, who is the president of Uganda, and other government officials and members of the parliament in one of his songs. This is a picture of Viboyo. Now, we're going to move on to cases of good practice. We've listed the cases of bad practice that have led to the suppression of artistic freedoms, and now we're going to talk about the good ones that have actually promoted artistic expression. So we'll focus on France and New Zealand. The introduction of the pioneering French law on artistic freedom, architecture, and heritage was adopted in July 2016, proclaiming that artistic creation is free. For the first time in international law, it establishes artistic expressions as public goods and further specifies that the dissemination of artistic creation is free to ensure greater public access to artistic works. Now, as a result of this law, the government expects to promote a dynamic ecosystem for artists and creativity, to establish a legislative framework for music labels and set up an observatory for artistic creation and cultural diversity. Also, Immigration Authority in New Zealand has reduced immigration barriers for international performers, musicians, and their crew. Rather than obtaining work visas, they are granted visitor visas. These visas are cheaper and require less documentation. The artists and crew members must be participating in recognized art festivals or promoted by a music promoter included on New Zealand's immigration-approved music promoter list. Through these measures, the New Zealand government expects that they will generate opportunities not just for international artists, but for local artists to acquire new skills and expertise through their interactions with international artists, as well as to improve access to diverse cultural expressions for local audiences. And to date, over 40 festivals and 41 music promoters are being approved. In conclusion, this particular unit, this course, examined cases of repression and support in some countries with regards to artistic and creative freedom in order to highlight the best practices to promote artistic freedom. So we hope that with all that you've heard today in this unit, that you've been able to learn that you've learned about how some countries promote artistic freedoms and how some countries suppress it, and that you've also learned through this unit some of the things that can be done to encourage governments to actually pass laws that would help to promote artistic freedoms in countries all over the world. Thank you very much.